Sometimes friendship doesn't end in a fight. Nobody has done anything unforgivable to each other. Nothing terrible has happened. You just start noticing that something between the two of you feels different. Maybe you do not talk as often. Or maybe you talk all the time, but you just don't feel as close as you used to. Maybe the friendship is still there in all of the invisible ways. You send each other birthday texts. You know what's happening in each other's life, and you call each other friends. But somewhere along the way, it stopped feeling the way it used to. And that is where it gets very confusing. Because how do you know when a friendship is over or whether it just needs to become different? Can it actually change? Friendship endings are strange because a lot of them don't really look like an ending. There may not be a clear conversation that you can point to. There may not be a clear reason. There may not even be a decision involved. It's just less conversation, less ease, less effort, less of that feeling that this person is really in your life with you. And because nothing has been officially ended, you can spend a lot of time trying to figure it out. What is this? Are we still close or are we just busy? Is this a hard season or I'm expecting too much? Have we grown apart or am I holding to a friendship that it only exists because you used to? I have had friendship where the distance changed everything. We had different realities, different experiences, different lives, and we lost the regular contact that we once had. But when we pick up that phone and get in touch again, it's like we never miss a bit. The warmth returns. The conversation doesn't feel forced. There is still curiosity, affection, and that deep sense of friendship that doesn't go away simply because we have not been in each other's lives. I think it matters because it tells us something important right away. Distance does not necessarily mean that the friendship is over, but the opposite is also true because you can talk to somebody every day and not feel close. You can know all the details in each other's life and yet feel like the relationship has gone quiet. So proximity is not the test. Frequency is not the test. The number of years you have known each other is also not the test. The harder question is whether the friendship still has room for who each of you is now. You may have noticed it in small ways. You may hold back before saying something. You wait until everything is resolved and you understand fully how you feel. And even when you share it, you may be holding some parts back. And that didn't used to be the case. Maybe you still make plans, but you don't look forward to them as much as you used to. Maybe you leave the conversation feeling slightly unsettled, but you can't quite explain why. Or perhaps nothing feels wrong or bad, it just feels thin. The friendship has become a series of updates. Work is busy, family is fine, everything is good. You talk, but you don't really arrive anywhere together. And then there are friendships that almost do not exist in the day-to-day. But when they reconnect, it feels real almost immediately. You can laugh, you can remember, you can pick up a conversation, whether it's been 6 months or 6 years. So it's not so obvious. A friendship can be quiet and still feel very alive. And it can be active but feel emotionally over. Sometimes the friendship isn't over, but that particular version of the friendship is. That may be the thing that we need to understand. Because when we think about a friendship being over, we automatically assume that there are only two possibilities. Either we are friends the way we have always been friends, or the friendship is over. But there is a very large and uncomfortable space between these two options. The friendship may still matter deeply, while the old ways in which we were friends may no longer work. And that is often where the real confusion begins. Long friendships carry more than just memories. They carry context. This person may know you before the job, before the marriage, before the divorce, before the kids, before the move, or before the version of you that everyone else knows now. She may remembers what you used to worry about when you were 23. She may remembers why a certain song affects you the way it does. She may remembers why a holiday is particularly difficult for you, or why you always laugh before you cry. There was a version of you that existed with her. That kind of history matters. It creates continuity. It gives you a sense that somebody has been there seeing you change and grow rather than just meet you halfway through it. And when a friendship like that changes, we're not only deciding what is happening right now, we're also deciding what to do with everything that it has held, and that is not simple. But history can become confusing when we start treating it as a requirement. We've been friends for 20 years, and sometime under that, there is another thought, and therefore we need to remain friends. But the length of friendship tells us what has happened. It does not automatically tell us what may happen next. Friendship probably should not have a valedictorian. One person does not have to graduate to a more evolved version while the other one stays behind. Growth is not always a ranking system. Sometimes two women just change in different directions. Neither one has to be the villain. Neither one has to be less aware, less mature, or less worthy. The friendship may have been built around a version of your lives that does no longer exist. You worked together. You lived close by. You raised children together. You shared a community. You were both single. You were both navigating the same kind of loss. Life kept putting you in the same rooms. Then life changed. And once the structure was removed, then your friendship could not run on its own. It required intention. Some friendships make that transition just fine, but some do not. That doesn't mean that the friendship wasn't real. It just means that what held you together is no longer there. And now this friendship has to answer a question. Can we build something that fits who we are now? There is another side of this that matters. We live in a culture where we can turn any difficult relationship into a warning sign. Somebody disappoints you, and the sign is to immediately cut them off. Someone doesn't show up in the way you have hoped for, and the relationship is immediately labeled one-sided. A friendship becomes uncomfortable, and the discomfort is immediately used as proof that the relationship is unhealthy. A real relationship are not always comfortable. Friends misunderstand each other. They miss things. They're consumed by their own private lives. They make assumptions. They fail to ask the right question at the right time. They may say something careless. Sometimes they may need more grace than we're willing to give it in the moment. A difficult season does not mean that the friendship is immediately over. And an uneven effort for a period of time does not mean that the friendship is gone. There are times when one woman carries more because the other one simply cannot. Illness, grief, caregiving, a new baby, a divorce, financial pressure, or depression. Life can shrink a woman without shrinking her love. But compassion does not mean that you have to pretend that you're not noticing a pattern. There is a difference between a friendship going through a season of imbalance and a friendship that is built around one giving and the other one receiving. There is a difference between somebody having limited capacity right now and somebody that has no interest in meeting you. There is a difference between making room for imperfections and repeatedly abandoning your own experience to make the friendship work. Those distinctions matter, but they are rarely visible in one incident. Relationships are not a court case. You're probably not going to find one piece of evidence that proves beyond any reasonable doubt that the friendship is over. However, that is often what we look for. The one unanswered text that settles everything. That invitation that did not come. That conversation that makes the friendship completely make sense. Sometimes there is an event, a very clear one, but most of the time it's an accumulation of little things that amount to what the friendship has become today. And that requires judgment, not persecution. When we care about a friendship, we can spend a lot of time thinking about what may have gone wrong. We replay conversation. We think about, have we possibly been unfair? We try to interpret the silence. Or we spend a lot of time talking about the friendship to someone else rather than talking to her directly. And sometimes that is healthy. Sometimes we need to understand our own feelings before we bring them into a conversation. But eventually, if the friendship is going to be repaired, someone has to speak up. Not dramatically, not with a list of charges, just honestly. Maybe it sounds like, I miss how close we used to be. I've noticed something between us feels different. I'm not sure whether this is just life or something has changed for you too. Can we talk about it? Those conversations can be very vulnerable because you may not get the answer you're hoping for. She may not have noticed. She may see the friendship very differently. She may genuinely believe everything is just fine. She may have feelings that she never said out loud before. And that is part of the repair too. The willingness to be in a friendship that each of you see in a different way. You may believe you were always available, but she may actually felt as if you were not there for her. You may believe the friendship changed when she moved away, but she believes the friendship changed 2 years earlier where something important happened and it went unspoken. You may have spent months waiting for her to reach out while she was waiting for the same thing. Repairs can require conversation, but it can also require curiosity. Can I listen to your experience without immediately correcting it? Can you hear mine without treating it as accusation? Can we both acknowledge the impact that it had on each other, even when that was not the intended way? And most important, are we both willing to participate in whatever comes next? Because one person can repair, but one person alone cannot make a successful friendship. Sometimes these conversations bring relief. The friendship was never over. It was neglected and covered by real life happening. Sometimes these conversations reveal that there's still deep care, but the expectation is no longer realistic. And sometimes these conversations reveal something that you already suspected. One or both of you are not able or willing to build a different version of the friendship. That hurts, but it is still clarity. What if the friendship is not broken enough to leave, but is also not working well enough to leave it as is? That is the part that we do not talk about enough. We keep asking, should I stay or should I let it go? But maybe those are not the only choices. Maybe the friendship simply need to change. A friendship doesn't have to remain equally close, equally central, or equally frequent to remain important. Maybe you used to talk every day, and now you talk once a month. Maybe you're no longer each other's first call when something happens, but when you do connect, it is still very powerful and very honest. Maybe the friendship becomes lighter or more intentional. Maybe it loses some of the intimacy, but it keeps the warmth. Maybe you stop expecting that person to give you something that she can generally not give you and start appreciating what she can actually offer. That can sound like settling, but sometimes that is just seeing the friendship clearly exactly for what it is. Not every friend has to occupy the same space in your life as it always has. We do not have to turn every change in closeness into a judgment, but changing the friendship's forms requires honesty. If one person believes you are still her best friend, but the other one has moved the friendship to the other edge, there is going to be pain. If one person is expecting daily closeness, but the other one can only offer occasional meetings, pretending that there is not a difference will not make that relationship kinder. Sometimes the most respectful thing that we can do is don't ask the old version of our relationship to perform after it has already ended. Maybe the old friendship is exactly what stopped working. But that does not mean that the new version will be less meaningful, but it may be less automatic, less central, less involved. It may need different boundaries. It may require both people to stop keeping score over the past. And it may require accepting that changing the friendship may no guarantee everyone will feel comfortable with the change. One woman may feel relieved, while the other one may feel rejected. One may experience the new version as more realistic, while the other one may experience it as a loss. Both experiences can be very real. The goal is not to create a version of your friendship that has no discomfort. The goal is to find out whether there is a version of the friendship both of you can inhabit. Sometimes there is not. Sometimes one of you needs for the friendship to stay exactly the way you always have been. Sometimes any attempt to discuss the friendship becomes an argument about who has done more. Sometimes one person wants to repair the friendship while the other one just wants the discomfort gone. Sometimes there is affection, but the trust is gone. Sometimes the two people want fundamentally different types of friendships. And sometimes both genuinely care, but they don't have the willingness or ability to build something different. There may not be a dramatic ending. There may not be a final conversation that wraps it all up. You may simply arrive to a point where you realize the friendship cannot continue in a way that feels honest to the both of you. That can be especially hard when none of you has done anything terrible. We understand endings better when we can clearly define what happened. A betrayal, a lie, a repeated violation, a cruel remark. But what do you do when the friendship has become clearly unsustainable, but nothing bad has happened? What do you do when there's still love, but no workable relationship? That is often when people start searching for a villain. Because if someone is wrong, the ending feels a lot easier to justify. But not every ending requires a guilty party. Sometimes two people just reach the edge of what they can build together. That does not erase the good. That does not make the friendship into a mistake. That may just means that there is not a new version that both of you are able or willing to build. When a friendship ends, the grief is often hard to explain because you may not know exactly what are you grieving. The person, certainly, but maybe also the closeness, the routine, the shared language, the ease of not having to explain yourself from the beginning. Or maybe you're grieving the history, The fact that that person knew an earlier version of you, and now she no longer occupies the place that you thought she always would. Maybe you're grieving the version of you that existed within that friendship. There was a way you laughed when you were talking with her. You may felt understood. You may felt a special way in which you belong. And when friendship changes, it may feel as if that version of you has nowhere else to go. But you may also grieve the future, the trips you assume you will take together, the milestone you expected to share, the belief that no matter what, you two will be in each other's lives forever. That future may have never been talked about out loud, but it was real in your imagination. Losing can still hurt. And grief can have us believe that we need to do something. Call her, fix it, go back, try harder, find a way to restore what was lost. But sometimes grief is not instruction. Grief just means that what you lost truly mattered. You can grieve a friendship without reopening it. You can miss a friend without deciding that the relationship need to return the way it was. You can feel sadness and yet know that the old pattern no longer works. Grief does not always mean that you made the wrong choice. And it does not always mean that the relationship should have been saved. Sometimes it's simply the emotional cost of knowing that something meaningful has changed. Before we decide whether this friendship needs to stay, change, or end, there are 3 questions that I will sit with. Not because these 3 questions can make the decision for you. They cannot. And you don't have to force yourself into an answer today. I don't know yet. Maybe just the most honest answer you have right now. But this question may help you understand what you are deciding. What was real between us? Not was the friendship perfect, and not was she always there. But what was genuinely real? What did this friendship give you? What did you learn? When did you feel known, supported, challenged, or loved? And what did you offer in return? These questions matters because when a friendship becomes painful, we may rewrite the entire history as bad, or we may do the opposite and use the good history to excuse everything that is not working now. You do not have to do either. The friendship may have been real and meaningful. It may also no longer work in its current form. Both can be true. What has actually changed? Is it the amount of contact, the effort, the trust, the way you speak to each other, the expectations, your capacity, her capacity, the life you once had in common? Or have one or both of you changed in ways the friendship has now been able to hold? Try to be specific. We grew apart may be true, but it does not tell you very much. What does apart mean here? What became harder? What stopped happening? What began happening instead? And is the change temporary or has it become the new reality? If this friendship was going to continue, what would both of us have to be willing to do differently? Both of us, not only you. Would you need to have a conversation you have been avoiding? Would both of you need to stop comparing the friendship with what it was 10 years ago? Would she need to participate more consistently? Would you need to adjust an expectation she cannot realistically meet? Would both of you need to acknowledge hurt? Would the friendship need to become lighter, less frequent, or less central? And is that version something both people actually want? You're not asking whether you could keep the friendship alive by trying harder. You're asking what mutual change will be required and whether mutual change is actually available. The takeaway tool from these episodes give you room to think about the friendship without turning it into a verdict. It allows space for you to write what the friendship truly meant, what has changed, what repairs would be required, what belongs to you and what belongs to the other person, what you may have been grieving, and what form your friendship could take realistically now if it was to continue. The last question is, what would it look like to remember this friendship honestly without forcing it to become what it used to be? A friendship does not have to end in anger to be over, and it does not need to look what it used to be to remain meaningful. The difficult part is learning how to tell the difference. Sometimes a friendship is still there, underneath the distance or difficult seasons. Sometimes it needs an honest conversation. Sometimes it needs different expectations. Sometimes the friendship can change, become quieter, less central, or lighter without becoming meaningless. And sometimes there is no new version that both of you are able or willing to build. You do not have to make the friendship all good or all bad to understand what it has become. It can have been loving and difficult, real and imperfect, meaningful and over. You can honor what it has been without pretending that the present is something that is just not. And you can grieve what it has been without treating it as a command to go back. Maybe the question is not only, is this friendship over? Maybe the better question is, does this friendship still have the room for the women that we have become? And if it does, are we both willing to build that new version? You do not have to force an ending before you understand the change. Have you ever had a friendship that changes form without ending the friendship? If this conversation was relatable, please subscribe and stay a while. And come back next Saturday for the next episode of Real Women Unscripted, where we will pull more of these threads together. Thank you for being here. I'll see you next Saturday.